all these countries. So instead of just having the USSR and Ukraine and Belarus up to 1990, we now have 16 of these republics. So that suddenly we've got 16 KGBs, and we've got 16 delegations in the World Bank and the IMF, so that these institutions have now have metamorphosed into instruments of the revolution more clearly than was the case before. That is one reason why they are provisionally they were given this curious independence. But another very important reason is that with the apparent independence of these countries, they opened up scope for independent military action, so that the repression which subsequently took place in Georgia, Tajikistan, Moldova, and in Abkhazia could take place. The minorities could be suppressed, and Russia could be whiter than white. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
In other words, the communist, the repression was carried out by apparent non-communists.
Was delegated to...
Was delegated.
Yes, right.
And it was actually in the case of Georgia where the most severe repression has been taking place, supervised by Shevardnadze, who the West thought was a Christian. Was not only a Christian, but baptized a Christian, but the architect of the end of the Cold War.
Yes.
He's known as Stalin II in Georgia.
Yes. All right, in the early 1980s, Abraham Shifrin of Israel, an expert on Soviet concentration camps, published a guidebook to these camps listing over 1,700 concentration camp sites in the Soviet Union with millions of prisoners. Are we to believe that all of these suddenly vanished in about 1989?
Are we to believe that these people suddenly, all of a sudden, set aside their ideology and suddenly started talking normally?
Or the some 60 million members of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, did they all stop being members of it instantly at the same time?
Golitsyn makes it quite clear in his new book, The Perestroika Deception, that the power structures depend on the continued adherence to revolutionary objectives of the Komsomol. There are over 50 million members of Komsomol. They work closely with the structures. And so he says somewhere in the book, he says, scratch any of these so-called sudden instant Democrats, and you will find underneath them a Komsomol or a secret party member. So that all these people you see on the television screen in Moscow, they are all, without exception, secret party or Komsomol members.
We're going to have to do a second show on the content of Perestroika Deception because it covers the period of 1989 through 1993 and written by Golitsyn and actually derived from memoranda he prepared for the CIA, which they of course ignored. But we hear about free enterprise, a burgeoning of free enterprise in the Soviet Union and in the Eastern European countries. What is the reality of this? I mean, isn't it overwhelmingly controlled and limited in a way that makes a mockery of the term free enterprise?
They themselves call it state-controlled capitalism, which is, of course, a contradiction in terms. What has happened is that Lenin's original state was a criminal state. The Chekar, the Soviet intelligence, controlled the mafia, invented the mafia, became the mafia. So that this apparent outbreak of free enterprise we see is in fact controlled by the KGB, and this outbreak of Soviet criminality is controlled, and it's being exported on a global scale. Why is it being exported? In order to, it's one of the themes that they are developing to create problems which need global solutions, so that there's a world crime epidemic, terrorist epidemic. We've got to have global structures in order to contain this epidemic which they themselves have created. Also, the KGB-generated criminal activity provides an excuse for ever tighter control over whatever window dressing business or free enterprise or business or entrepreneurial activity may exist over there. Sure, and not only that, but of course you've got the drug element as well. Since the 1950s, Soviet military intelligence, GRU, has been in control of drug networks all over the world. And